Have you ever wondered what would happen if a WWE superstar walked to the ring not ready for action, but stumbling from alcohol? Fans come expecting explosive performances, yet sometimes all they get is pure chaos. The WWE ring is usually the stage for unforgettable emotions, a place where fans believe the wrestlers are always at their absolute best. But that's not always the case. Behind the makeup, flashy gear, and signature moves, there have been times when wrestlers stepped out while intoxicated. All-night parties and endless road trips turned some of them into drunken messes in front of thousands of fans, leaving behind controversial and unforgettable moments. Let's start with the first name. Number 1. X-Pac. During the Attitude Era, Shawn Waltman, better known as X-Pac, was a key member of D-Generation X, bringing rebellion and high energy to the show. But away from the bright lights, his personal life was marked by alcohol and partying. Several of his matches became clear examples of what happens when a wrestler competes while not sober. One often cited story comes from the late 90s, when X-Pac and Road Dogg would frequently show up to shows still feeling the effects of the previous night's drinking. At one European house show, Waltman was so drunk he couldn't keep his rhythm. Even his trademark Bronco Buster came off sloppy, drawing awkward laughs and boos from the crowd. His partner had to step in quickly, cover things up, and cut the match short before it got worse. Another incident took place in 2002, after he left WWE and worked in TNA, then NWA TNA. On several live broadcasts, X-Pac was visibly staggering, his face flushed, and struggling to move around the ring. At one point, he even botched a springboard attempt because he couldn't keep his balance, nearly injuring himself. Though he managed to patch things up with his technical skills, it was clear to everyone that he wasn't at his best. Perhaps the saddest story came in the early 2010s on the independent scene. A viral clip showed him entering the ring with a shaky walk and slurred speech, clearly drunk before the match even began. His opponent had to carry most of the bout while fans watched their former hero undone by alcohol. X-Pac himself later admitted in interviews that drinking and drugs ruined many of his career opportunities. From being a central part of DX, he eventually became seen as a liability because he couldn't control himself. His story is a harsh reminder. Talent can take you to the top, but without discipline, alcohol can drag you all the way down. Number 2. Shawn Michaels. In the 90s, fame and money pushed Shawn Michaels into a reckless lifestyle. The Heartbreak Kid wasn't just known for his incredible in-ring talent. He was also infamous for his wild habits with alcohol, smoking, and other vices that left people shaking their heads. He lived for rebellion during that period, with little regard for the consequences. Michaels himself has openly admitted how deep he was into drinking. In a 2017 interview, he revealed there were times he wrestled while still drunk. It's hard for fans to believe, but those words came directly from the legend himself. He claimed that thanks to his natural talent and instincts, he could still deliver great matches even when not completely sober. What's interesting is that Shawn never specified which matches this happened in. Fans never complained, and no opponents ever came forward with grievances, so his confessions are all we have. Most likely, his unique style and professionalism allowed him to hide it from the audience. Still, the fact that a top star risked his career, health, and even the safety of his fellow wrestlers because of alcohol is something that can't be overlooked. Looking back, it was a dark chapter that perfectly reflected who Shawn Michaels was in his younger years. Gifted, arrogant, reckless, and always pushing the limits. Thankfully, he turned his life around and later became a respected veteran and role model. But the idea that Shawn once wrestled drunk remains both shocking and sad. He might have been able to perform under the influence, but someone of HBK's stature should never have let it come to that. Number 3. Jake Roberts. If there's one name forever tied to the tragedy of alcohol and substance abuse in wrestling, it's Jake, the Snake, Roberts. In the late 80s and early 90s, he was among the most popular stars in the business, a master of ring psychology with his cold, calculating style and his legendary finishing move, the DDT. But behind the fame, Roberts spiraled into dangerous habits that sent his career into a steep decline. For years, addiction issues robbed him of his prime and at times even put his life at risk. Without the intervention and relentless support of Diamond Dallas Page later on, Jake Roberts might not even be alive today to tell his story. One of the worst and most infamous moments of his career came in 1999 at the Heroes of Wrestling event in Las Vegas. What was meant to be a nostalgic celebration where fans could relive the magic of their childhood heroes turned into a disaster. Roberts was scheduled to face Jim Neidhart in a singles match, but he was so intoxicated that the promoters had to change it into a tag team bout. Even then, it didn't help. In the ring, Jake staggered around aimlessly, leaving fans first shocked, then disappointed. His backstage promos were incoherent rambles that made little sense. Things got even worse when he acted inappropriately toward a female fan and used his iconic snake prop in a crude, unacceptable way that outraged the audience. For many, that was the heartbreaking moment they realized their childhood idol had fallen from grace. Thankfully, Robert's story didn't end in darkness. Through his perseverance and the support of friends, he regained his health, earned a place in the WWE Hall of Fame, and became an example of redemption. Still, the memory of Jake Roberts stumbling to the ring drunk remains an unforgettable reminder of how far even the greatest can fall. Number 4. Andre the Giant. When people think of Andre the Giant, they picture his massive size and unmatched strength. But alongside his legendary presence was a drinking ability that bordered on myth. Stories of his alcohol consumption became folklore in wrestling, with the most famous tale being that Andre once drank 156 beers in a single sitting. While those stories are often told as light-hearted anecdotes, his drinking didn't always stay harmless. One infamous incident happened in 1986 during a match with Japanese wrestler Akira Maeda. What should have been a highly entertaining showcase quickly collapsed into chaos. Andre entered the bout far from sober, and the match slowed to a sloppy, awkward pace. Maeda, known for his fiery temper and refusal to play along, became visibly frustrated. He started throwing legitimate strikes, escalating the tension and turning the atmosphere in the arena uncomfortable. The match dragged on for over 30 minutes, but it was little more than a confusing mess, devoid of its intended excitement. Finally, Antonio Inoki, legendary wrestler and founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling, stepped in personally to call off the match. And when Inoki spoke, no one dared to argue. Rumors later spread that Inoki may have deliberately allowed Andre to enter the ring drunk as a way to punish Maeda, who was notorious for rebelling against booking decisions. Whatever the truth, the result was one of the most disastrous encounters in both men's careers. This story shows that even a larger-than-life icon like Andre the Giant wasn't immune to the consequences of alcohol. His image as an unstoppable giant was tarnished, at least for a moment, by a night of poor judgment that left an unforgettable mark in wrestling history. Number 5. The Sandman. It's almost surprising it took us this long to mention a name forever tied to ECW, the company Paul Heyman turned into wrestling's lawless land. ECW was infamous for its violent, bloody, anything-goes matches, and that chaos didn't just happen in the ring, it carried over into the lifestyles of many of its stars. None embodied that more than the Sandman, who practically made wrestling drunk part of his gimmick. Sandman never hid his habits. In fact, they became part of his character. His entrances were iconic, beer in hand, chugging it in front of fans, then smashing the can against his own forehead until blood mixed with beer streamed down his face. The crowd went wild while his opponents could only shake their heads. For Sandman, alcohol seemed to be the fuel that sent him into battle. One of the clearest examples came at One Night Stand. The night was already chaotic. JBL, also not sober, brutally beat down Blue Meanie, but Sandman still managed to stand out. He was so drunk that he could barely control himself. When Stone Cold Steve Austin tried to deliver the closing promo, Sandman repeatedly interrupted, shoving his face close and breaking the moment's flow. One look at his glazed-over eyes told the whole story. He wasn't anywhere near sober. And that wasn't rare for him. Stories spread among fans and the media about his recklessness, like the time he allegedly took hallucinogens right before a brutal ladder match with Sabu. The result was about even more chaotic than usual, largely because Sandman had no ability to pace himself or control his movements. What amazed people most was that he survived and lasted in ECW for so many years. Maybe it was that recklessness, that live hard attitude, that made him the perfect symbol of ECW's extreme spirit. But looking back, it's hard to call it professionalism. It was more a testament to just how comfortable Sandman was with being drunk in the ring. Number 6. William Regal. William Regal, the pride of Blackpool and one of wrestling's greatest technical masters, also had a period where his life was consumed by addiction. He has never hidden the fact that alcohol and drugs nearly destroyed both his career and his life. The 1990s were his darkest years, leading him into rehab in 1999 just to regain control. But before he found redemption, a humiliating incident played out live on television. At the time, Regal was wrestling under the name Steven Regal, portraying the real man's man gimmick, a hard hat-wearing minor character that was silly, but memorable. On November 2, 1998, he was booked to face Goldust on Raw. What should have been a routine match quickly turned into one of the most infamous moments of Regal's career. From the second he walked out, fans could tell something was off. Regal staggered with every step, his face flushed, his eyes half shut. The moment he picked up a microphone, it became undeniable. His promo was rambling, his words slurred, leaving the audience both frustrated and disappointed. The fact he even remembered a few lines was surprising, but nothing could hide his drunken state. Still, the show went on. Regal entered the match and tried to execute his usual holds, but it's impossible for someone who could barely walk straight to wrestle smoothly. He stumbled through basic movements, struggled to apply a chin lock, and delivered one of the flattest matches of his career. The crowd could see it. This once promising star had turned himself into a joke. Thankfully, those days are behind him. Regal eventually overcame his addictions, rebuilt himself, and went on to become one of the most respected figures backstage. Today he's remembered not only as a skilled wrestler, but also as a mentor who helped train the next generation. Yet for anyone who watched Raw in 1998, the image of a drunken Regal stumbling into the ring remains an unforgettable memory. Number 7. Scott Hall, the bad guy, and his endless battle with alcohol. Scott Hall will always be remembered as one of the most charismatic figures in professional wrestling. With his towering frame, cocky demeanor, and captivating presence, he became the embodiment of the bad guy, a villain fans loved to hate but couldn't look away from. Yet behind the bravado was a man haunted by his past, fighting demons every single day. Hall's tragedy began early. At just 20 years old, he found himself in a horrific situation where he had to take a man's life in self-defense during a bar fight. Though he wasn't convicted, the memory left a scar that never faded. Struggling with PTSD, he turned to alcohol and drugs as a way to cope. That decision sent him into a downward spiral that repeatedly derailed his career. During his time in WCW, Hall's addictions grew worse. Instead of protecting him, the company made his personal struggles part of the on-screen storyline. Fans saw him stumble to the ring, clearly intoxicated, but what happened behind the scenes was even darker. Unpredictable no-shows, reckless behavior, and matches that spiraled out of control. Hall became one of the most unreliable names in the business. One of his lowest points came in April 2011 at an independent show for Top Rope Promotions. When Hall walked out in front of the crowd, he was a shell of the bad guy fans once adored. He staggered, his body trembling as though he might collapse at any moment. Each step was slow and heavy, drawing sympathy more than heat. In the end, he had to be helped just to leave the ring. That night wasn't just a bad performance. It was a sobering reminder of how destructive alcohol and drugs had been to one of wrestling's brightest talents. Scott Hall wasn't only fighting opponents in the ring, he was waging war against himself every day of his life. And tragically, it was a battle he never truly won. Number 8. Road Warrior Hawk. When it comes to controversial storylines involving alcohol, few are as infamous as Road Warrior Hawks. As one half of the legendary Legion of Doom, Hawk was a larger-than-life figure. But WWE controversially turned his real-life struggles into a storyline on Raw, portraying him week after week as an unstable drunk. The angle peaked with a segment where Hawk fell off the Titantron, pushed by Draws as part of the script. Even though it was kayfabe, the storyline was heavily criticized for being tasteless and exploiting his addiction. But Hawk's problems weren't limited to storylines. He genuinely showed up in poor condition at major events. One of the most infamous examples came at SummerSlam 1992 in London's Wembley Stadium, a historic night remembered for the British Bulldog's iconic victory. Yet if you asked Hawk about his role in that night, you wouldn't get much, because he was too drunk to even remember it. During Legion of Doom's match against Money Incorporated, Hawk was completely out of control. His movements were sluggish, his timing off, and his performance so disjointed that Animal had to carry most of the match himself. Their opponents, Ted DiBiase and IRS, were frustrated afterward, criticizing Hawk's lack of professionalism. Wrestling in that condition wasn't just embarrassing, it put everyone in the ring at risk. What's surprising is that despite his disastrous showing at such a massive event, Hawk didn't face major consequences. The popularity of Legion of Doom and the love of the fans likely shielded him from punishment. Still, the incident stands as proof of how deeply alcohol had affected Hawk's career, tarnishing the legacy of a once respected legend and tying his name to some of wrestling's most regrettable drunken moments. Number 9. Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett has long been regarded as one of wrestling's great survivors. Over the course of nearly 4 decades, he constantly reinvented himself, rising from a young wrestler to a multi-time champion in major promotions, to the founder of TNA and later Global Force Wrestling. His remarkable ability to adapt kept him relevant despite the industry's constant upheavals. But Jarrett's journey was far from flawless. Alongside his successes, there were dark periods where alcohol took control, leading to moments that left fans deeply disappointed. In the mid-2010s, after stepping away from TNA to focus on Global Force Wrestling, rumors began circulating that Jarrett was frequently hitting the bars before shows. At first, these stories sounded like mere locker room gossip, until a series of incidents made them harder to ignore. In 2014, at an IWA Mid-South event, both Jeff and his wife Karen were accused of showing up visibly intoxicated and out of control. 2 years later, in 2016, more whispers followed when Jarrett appeared at WrestleCon's Super Show in Dallas, with fans insisting he was far from sober when he stepped into the ring. All of this seemed to foreshadow the breaking point in October 2017. At an independent show in Canada, leaked footage revealed Jarrett wrestling while clearly drunk. According to the promoter, he arrived late, drank heavily backstage until he passed out, and when revived, still insisted on performing. The result was a chaotic, disjointed match that left the crowd not only disappointed but heartbroken to see a legend reduced to such a state. Immediately after the incident, Jarrett entered a WWE-sponsored rehabilitation program. It proved to be the turning point of his life. Over time, he regained balance, restored his reputation, and was eventually inducted into the Hall of Fame. Still, that turbulent chapter stands as a harsh reminder that even the most seasoned icons are not immune to being brought down by alcohol. Number 10. Alicia Fox. For years, Alicia Fox was known as one of WWE's most charismatic female performers, with a unique style and a flair that made her stand out. But in early 2019, her name became tied to one of the most controversial backstage incidents in WWE history. This wasn't a storyline or an on-screen moment. It was a real-life situation with serious consequences. It all began at a house show, events typically seen as low-pressure environments where wrestlers can experiment without the scrutiny of live television. But on that night, Alicia Fox arrived backstage far from sober. Rather than being pulled, she was allowed to perform in the ring. What followed was a strange, uncomfortable match where Fox's impaired state was obvious. Backstage, the decision to let her wrestle was seen as a ticking time bomb. The man held responsible was none other than Arn Anderson, the Four Horsemen legend who was producing the bout that evening. For Vince McMahon, this was the final straw. In his eyes, letting a performer step into the ring while intoxicated was reckless, endangering not just Fox but everyone involved. Within days, Arn Anderson was released from his contract. Ironically, it wasn't Fox who bore the immediate punishment, it was the veteran producer who paid the price. The incident became a dark stain on both of their careers. For Alicia, it reinforced the perception of a talented star who lacked discipline. For Arn, it marked a bitter end to his behind-the-scenes run in WWE. Above all, it served as a stark reminder. Even away from the TV cameras, one reckless decision can leave scars that never fully heal. Number 11. JBL. When booze turns into chaos. John Bradshaw Layfield, better known as JBL, was never shy about flaunting his Texas roots, his love for money, and an ego too big to ignore. Along with those traits, he was infamous for his aggressive temper and his hobby of mocking or even bullying colleagues. When that personality mixed with alcohol, the result was some of the most unforgettable incidents in WWE history. In 2005, WWE held One Night Stand, a special event honoring ECW, the rebellious brand known for being the complete opposite of WWE's traditional style. From the moment it was announced, JBL openly ridiculed ECW and made no effort to hide his contempt. That night at the Hammerstein Ballroom, Tensions were already sky-high as ECW originals stood face-to-face with Raw and SmackDown stars. JBL entered the arena not only hostile but also drunk. The combination of alcohol and hatred for ECW turned him into a ticking time bomb. When the brawl between both sides erupted, what was supposed to be a dramatic spectacle quickly turned real. JBL went after Blue Meanie, beating him relentlessly until his opponent was left bloodied, leaving fans stunned, unsure if they were watching a scripted spot or a legitimate assault. That moment became one of the biggest scandals of JBL's career. While WWE didn't heavily promote it, the footage still appeared in the DVD extras, proof of a night where the line between storyline and reality was completely erased. And it all came down to one reason: JBL let alcohol take control. The 2005 One Night Stand is remembered not just as ECW's special reunion, but also as a reminder of how booze can turn entertainment into a permanent stain on a superstar's career. For JBL, it was proof that not everything can be hidden behind the bright lights of the ring. Number 12. Marty Jannetty. When fans hear the name Marty Jannetty, many still remember him as one half of the Rockers alongside Shawn Michaels, a young, energetic duo full of potential. But while Shawn rose to become Mr. WrestleMania, Jannetty's path went the other way, derailed largely by alcohol and a reckless lifestyle. One of Jannetty's most notorious incidents came in the late 90s when WWE booked a short-lived reunion with Shawn. It should have been the perfect opportunity to restore his image. Instead, Jannetty showed up drunk just before going on air. Backstage staff recalled him barely able to stand, rambling incoherently, forcing last-minute changes to the show. Years later, in a 2005 independent event, Jannetty again wrestled while intoxicated. As the crowd cheered, he stumbled into the ring, his face flushed red, and his moves so sloppy that his opponent had to slow the match down to avoid serious injury. Fans went from excited to frustrated, then disappointed, watching a former WWE star reduced to such a state. Perhaps the biggest letdown came in 2006, when WWE brought him back for a storyline with Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. It could have been his final shot at redemption. But just weeks later, Jannetty was dropped from the angle after the company realized he couldn't stay sober in training or outside the ring. Repeated drunken episodes had destroyed any trust WWE had left. If Shawn Michaels symbolized discipline and determination, Jannetty was the painful example of throwing away potential through alcohol. To many, he will always be the other half of the Rockers, but behind that legacy are countless nights of heavy drinking, botched matches, and endless regret. Number 13. Brutus Beefcake. Brutus Beefcake was a recognizable star in WWE during the late 80s and early 90s. Known for his flashy outfits, wild hair, and oversized shears he used to cut his opponent's hair after matches, he stood out as a colorful personality. Outside the ring, though, Beefcake was no stranger to stepping between the ropes under the influence, leaving his reputation questioned. One often retold story comes from the rock and wrestling era, when WWF tours meant non-stop travel and after-show parties. Beefcake, a close friend of Hulk Hogan, had job security, which led him to take liberties. At one Canadian house show, he entered the ring visibly hungover and still reeking of alcohol from the night before. His basic moves, body slams, suplexes, were sluggish and sloppy, leaving fans quick to notice something was off. Another example came during his WCW run in the late 90s, where he went through several gimmicks, including The Disciple. On one live broadcast, Beefcake had allegedly been drinking before his segment. His face appeared flushed during his promo, his words slurred, and once the match started, he moved awkwardly, out of sync with his opponent, turning the bout into a clunky performance that drew boos. The most infamous case happened at an independent show after his WCW days. Beefcake entered the ring nearly unable to keep his balance. His opponent had to carry the entire match, while Brutus managed only a few simple spots before the bout ended quickly. Footage of the embarrassing scene circulated, damaging his fun-loving barber image for good. Though Beefcake later tried to rebuild his career and often appeared with Hulk Hogan at fan conventions, memories of his drunken in-ring moments remain an unshakable stain. His story is a reminder that no matter how strong your connections or position may be, alcohol can destroy your credibility in just a single night. These moments prove that the WWE ring is always full of surprises, especially when the superstars aren't at their best. Which one shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wrestling Sphere so you won't miss more behind-the-scenes stories.